All right, we're back for a super special episode. We've got our good friend here, Marcel Santilli. A lot of people know you, Marcel, but a lot of people don't. So I think it would be a shame for me to introduce you when you have so much to say about yourself. So I would love to hear you introduce yourself, tell us all about who you are, what you're currently building, and where you've been.
All right. Hey, where do we start? Marcel, originally from Brazil, grew up in Texas, started a career early on, large enterprises. And I think the biggest thing that kind of started to change the trajectory of my career was when I realized a lot of marketing was really empty, and I saw how much money IBM was wasting on content syndication and just like inefficient channels. And it kind of I came to this realization that companies and brands should be more like publishers, and publishers' business models all relied on building trust with their audiences. And by doing that, you can win their hearts and minds, and then they want to do business with you, right? But companies were really bad at being more like publishers. And so I started to do that for brands. And that's kind of what I've done throughout my career. And every single time it worked, but it took a long time for it to kind of take off because organic takes a little while. And I was lucky enough to end up landing at startups. And so I was at HashiCorp that ultimately went public. It's an amazing journey. Went from 6 to 100 million in 2 years. I was a service titan when I was there. It was just a little over 100 million in ARR. And then eventually was at Skill AI. I had known Alex for a couple of years prior to that. And so I was their first marketing leader, was there for 2 years, did a lot of fun stuff. It was a crazy place to be. And and then prior to starting GrowthX, I was at Deepgram. And I think what's really unique about both Scale and Deepgram is that both were training or at least creating the data to train their own models. And at Deepgram, they actually had their own compute, training their own data, had their own data labeling operations. We're doing model research, serving those models via API. And so it's really unique to be in AI for pretty much like 4+ years, but also being at companies that were almost vertically integrated. And then it started to build a lot of AI workflows and really took off for Deepgram, 24x our traffic, 4x revenue. From there, that led to a lot of workshops that ultimately led to people asking for help. And that's how GrowthX got started. I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of that, but that's a little
We're
bit
gonna
of
get into a
the
ton of it. Yeah.
TLDR of the journey.
Well, I think you did an amazing job summarizing that at a high level, but there's so much more context that goes into all of those different moves and what got you to where you are. I'm gonna want to dive deep into that. In particular, I mean, Scale AI made huge news, right? Sold for almost $15 billion for only half the company to Meta, massive. And you were the first CMO there, so super interesting. I think you downplayed that a little bit on how big of a role that actually was. You said marketing leader, you were the CMO. And then also you were at Deepgram for a while. So you've been in AI, and now you built your own AI company. But there's a lot of layers that factor into that. So the way you got into marketing, I think, sounds like it is kind of a testament to what made you start GrowthX too, from what I know at least. But it sounds like the story of Marcel is see a problem, fix a problem. Whether that's working in another company as a CMO, building your own thing as the CEO, doing all these different things. But talk about the transition from Deepgram, being an employee, whether you were a CMO or any other role, you were still working at another company. And now you run the company, you own the company. So, what
Yeah.
inspired you to finally take that leap, make the jump, and go into entrepreneurship? Because whether you're in AI or not, entrepreneurship is a different journey than working at a company.
Yeah.
And I think you know that just as well as anyone else.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, it took a little bit longer to take the leap, and maybe it's just the fear. Maybe it's just like stages in life. Maybe it's the not growing up around startups. As an immigrant, you're kind of like your parents are like, go to school, graduate, get a stable job, and that's it. Like just follow the plan kind of thing. But I think what I started to realize throughout my career, the I would always be frustrated. Every job I was at, like about a year or 2 years in, I would be frustrated already. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And I think eventually what I realized was just I'm a decisive person and I want to move ahead and I want to have ownership and I want to have agency. And often what I started to realize more and more as the higher you get and the closer you are to the CEO, there's like so much, a lot of companies don't make clear decisions or you have to convince so many people, so many things. And, and unless you start the company most companies are kind of set in stone in their culture, whether some of it being good or bad, right? And and then I think a couple of things started to really trigger me. The first one was, getting screwed over on equity and realizing how bullshit equity is for most startups. And I think most companies or most employees don't understand how equity works as startups, and it's a complete scheme for the most part. And it is because like you come in, exercise cost is insane. If you want to leave, you don't get the right to even buy this thing until after a year. And even then, there's clawback clauses. There's all these gotchas. And even if everything goes according to plan, at the very end, like the board and the CEO can still screw every employee out. And I've heard horror stories about that as well, right? Like, and so not to say there hasn't been amazing outcomes, right? But that was one thing. The second thing was just being in charge of my own destiny and kind of saying like, the whole pump valuation and build the company a certain way, not knowing how to make a profit, just hiring more people, being inefficient. There's just like so many things that just started to really trigger me. And I think one of the big ones was just being in meetings where it just feels like no one is owning the decisions, no one is driving something forward, right? And then I started to study and just listen to a couple of podcasts. There's this one called Newsletter Operators, and there's a couple others. And then I started to see these call it influencers or creators that just started to build like 10, $20 million a year businesses off of just the information they were sharing, right? And I was like, that is insane. You have one person, some of them never had a job before this, that just study a bunch, found a bunch of information, and then started sharing with everyone, built the whole business around it, didn't have access to VC money, didn't have access to all the tech that tech companies have, right? No SaaS products, nothing, and build a highly profitable business that's growing by just building different growth flywheels and essentially like systems that reinforce each other from a growth perspective and just overwhelming their audiences that they want to serve with value and then winning those audiences over and then eventually they want to work with them, right? And I'm like, if you can sell information and have a highly profitable, growing, repeatable business and revenue model off of information alone, like there's something there that clearly like tech companies, B2B companies, startups haven't gotten for the most part. So I started to study that and I was like, there's something here. And right around the time I just happened to have done some cool stuff at Deepgram that just like a lot of people had an interest in and that I had spent over 1,000 hours figuring out. And then I started to do workshops and it was kind of one of those things where by the time I quit Deepgram, it was kind of like I would be stupid not to quit in some ways, And then I think the last thing was just meeting my co-founder CTO, and that was always kind of the missing piece is having my technical counterpart, which I was super lucky to find.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think what's super interesting about your company, Marcel, is that it's not just a traditional tech company. It's like a hybrid approach. And so I'd love to hear more about that and your thoughts around like a hybrid approach, because we actually had Adam Robinson on like a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about Fixer, and they did a kind of more separate approach. They had their executive assistant agency, and they used the capital and the information and the data from that company to fund Fixer AI, but it's a very separate line of business. They're still running it, it's still active, but different approach. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
It's funny you mention them because I just met our office last week at
You
NSF.
Fixer guys?
Yeah, they're awesome, super
They're
smart
crushing
guys.
it.
Yeah, they're
Right.
crushing it. They're crushing
Yeah.
it. Actually, right before the meeting, I signed up a couple days before to their product, good product. Actually, helped me get to inbox zero my with my EA2, but it was pretty awesome. The meeting recordings functionality is pretty good. Anyways, not to promote them too much, but
No, I use it too. I use it
yeah.
too. Ali is about to get back on it too. We both have used it. It's a great product.
Yeah, it's a great product, simple, but it works. And it's funny because I was just talking to them about how some commonalities in our journey where they pretty much had a EA business, right? Like a EA plus business, and then they learn a bunch, and then they took a lot of the patterns that they learned from that and then built a product around it. I think for us, it was just the years of pain I've had felt as a marketing leader, and almost every single marketing leader we sell to or that comes to us because we've done zero marketing, right? Like, so something has to be resonating for people to still come in. And like, for the most part, the pain I've experienced was I come into a job. First of all, as a CMO or marketing leader, I'm the most at risk executive in the company. I have the shortest tenure in the company. I am for sure going to get fired at some point, for sure. And if
The
I go,
CMO and the CRO, they're the first to get cut every single time.
yeah, the CMO even worse. Like the CRO is usually like, hey, we didn't hit our numbers. What's the problem? Marketing. Okay, then we
Yeah.
didn't hit our numbers again. What's the problem? Sales. Okay, we didn't hit the numbers again. What's the problem? Product. Okay, we didn't hit the numbers again. What's the problem? Like the CFO, and then it's the CEO, and then is, I don't know what else is left, but let's just go home after that. But like I think the the interesting part here is actually like completely lost my train of thought here now as we're talking to the.
So how did you blend services and SaaS? Because you have a
Yes,
totally different
sorry.
model.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so the part that's really interesting, so I was solving my own problems, right? And every time you come into a CMO, you're the most at-risk executive. Then you come in and there's crazy unrealistic expectations, right? It's usually you're supposed to come in as a silver bullet. You come in, it's like, hey, something's not working here. We need help. And then you come in and you're like, hey, if I go and I try to learn the company for the next 3 months and figure out everything there's to know, in 3 months, CEO's already going to be pissed at me for not doing enough, right? So then if I go and just suggest I need to hire 10 more people, I'm also going to be in trouble because I don't know if those are the 10 people I need. I know I need because I actually need to figure out what I need first, right? But then hiring takes time. Okay, if I go start firing people, people are going to be pissed at me. So almost every time was like the same thing. It's like, where's most of the money going? Paid. I like, okay, is there some optimization really quickly here that I can just like really quickly save some money? And then it was like, okay, now I need to figure out how to grow organically. And it was always the same thing. We either hire teams and then, or you hire agencies. And it was always, I don't have good agencies to hire. Where can I find them? And then you ask around your friends and people in your network. They kind of, oh, this one's okay, but can't really vouch for them. And then you hire them anyways, and then it's okay. So then you're like, F this, I'm just going to go find a bunch of freelancers. And then you're like, okay, how do I pay these 20 people every week? And then, okay, now my whole team is asking for 20 different tools to use. And then you're 6 months in and the numbers haven't moved, right? And that is literally the story of every single CMO, every single marketing leader, at least we've talked to, and has been my experience as a marketing leader every single time, right? And so like what you wish you just had at least one of the functions you're thinking about should just be able to hire someone you can trust that will do the strategy, the execution, and be tech forward and tech powered, right? And in this case, AI powered. And so that's ultimately what we started to do at Build. And the way we think about services is a forcing function to figure out what does it take to deliver great work, and then consistently deliver great work and then reproduce that and scale that, right? And if you're doing that through service, there's no other way but to figure out how to do that more efficiently because services is really hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about this also. You simplified it really well when we had dinner in San Francisco, but you basically said we're productizing the workflows that our humans are building. So it's like the humans are already doing these workflows, they're building these workflows, they're producing this content, and they're generating X kind of results. Why don't we just productize the work these humans are doing to make them 10 times more efficient because we have AI at our fingertips? So what you showed us back in the day, and that was premature, that was what, 3 months ago at this point? But a lot can change in 3 months, especially in the world that we're living in. But you had a library of basically code bases that were scripts that would trigger certain actions. But how has the product evolved since then? Because you guys have grown like crazy. We're going to talk about your numbers in a minute, but you've grown like crazy. But how has that evolved since then?
Yeah, so there's a couple of key insights here, and we'll be sharing a lot more, but I guess people can hear first, I guess, maybe publicly. But so one of the key insights is coding agents are getting much, much, much better, much faster. And the main reason for that is because repos are out there, source codes are out there, you can see the pull request, you can see the change, you can see everything, and you can test code. But also you can see the comments, there's actual really good documentation available, and even more importantly, more recently with the cursors and augment code and others out there, there's essentially millions of engineers being reinforcement learning loops. They're just like reinforcing things, validating things, changing things, improving things, and it's just like amazing learning data, right, to have. So coding agents are way, way better. Then you have all these low-code tools, and they serve a purpose, don't get me wrong, but they are just not manageable and scalable. If you go to any massive company out there, do you think Facebook or Meta or, OpenAI is managing their infrastructure in a point solution where they log into something and click something or have to drag and drop something? Absolutely not. That's managing code, right? Uh, and so then like companies like most critical assets, like their workflows, how they go about doing their most valuable work, first of all, is not documented, is not represented anywhere, and can't be reproduced. And maybe there's okay documentation, but there's definitely like none of the patterns. It's definitely nothing like code, right? Now you go to the same companies and you say, hey, what's your most valuable IP? They'll go, hey, it's our source code. Okay, don't touch that, right? Like that's our source code. There's documentation around it. There's processes around it. People are collaborating around it. It's documented, right? And so I think this next phase, what we start to realize is that we need to take more of a coding and developer and engineering mindset to knowledge work. And the way to do that is, first of all, you need to figure out what does great work look like and figure out the messy middle of knowledge work, right? Then you need to codify that and you need to run it. And I think the way to kind of simplify I think the best analogy so far that I found, I think is I'm a foodie. I love food. And so if we go to a Michelin star restaurant and you see this beautiful, magical Michelin star dish and you're just like, wow, this is magic, right? And you have a video of it, you have all the pictures. You know what? Here's every ingredient. I'll even give you the list of like how much of each ingredient you need. You have the inputs and you have the perfect output. You cannot reproduce the output based on that alone. Like no matter how hard you try, you will not reproduce that Michelin star dish, right? So why? Because there's this whole messy middle. And the messy middle, we think, is the most valuable piece that needs to be captured in knowledge work. It's the thought process is the aha, right? But then the problem right now is the messy middle doesn't happen in a vacuum. It most likely happens in interactions with AI, right? And some things maybe will happen without AI at all, but like there's this kind of like interaction, tweaking your thoughts, and then you're connecting some dots, elevating your thinking, and whatnot. And so all that needs to be captured. So for us, our product is essentially codifying workflows. And so think of it like all that messy middle, all the 100 different steps that and thought patterns that happen. Figure out where human interventions need to happen and what is the reason that human intervention needs to happen there. How do you evaluate it? How do you learn from it? And so in order to do that, you need an expert hub. And you need an expert hub that knows your profile, what you're good at, your experience, where to put you in to intervene with those tasks, right? And you need a learn engine to take all of that and learn from it, So that's what's under the hood. It sounds a little bit crazy, but, when I show it, it's a little bit easier to understand. And all of that to power our services. And then we have kind of an OS that for now it's used by our internal teams, and pretty quickly we're exposing it to our customers as well. That is just kind of how they interface with the work and the workflows as well.
So, like, as you scaled, how have you maintained like the quality in the outputs? Because I imagine you're signing a ton of new clients, like in the past couple of months. How are you making sure the quality of the work is up to par with what they expect?
It's hard. I don't think we figured it out. Humans
You
are
and I were
hard, man.
talking about that the other day. It gets super hard. The faster you scale, the more clients you onboard. It
Yeah,
just gets harder and
it's
harder.
really hard. The way we're thinking about it, there's a lot of different kind of vectors that we're trying to optimize for. So the company split between build and deliver, right? And so the build team is our engineering product design organization. We have design engineers. We have, our CTO, co-founder, and so that's the build team, building all what we like to share, like the common core, right? And so these are like common components and infrastructure that powers everything else, right? And then on the delivery side, we're kind of structured a little bit like a law firm, I guess, with managing directors and then managers that are assigned to clients, and so they're almost like small little pods, right? And so on the deliver side, we kind of split because there's a couple of different needs. One is strategy and setup. The other one is like the day-to-day delivery, if you will, which think of it as like customer success, managing the account, like, understanding the strategy, connecting the dots, holding the bar of quality, right? And then there's like, I guess we call it production, right? It's like making sure the thing we're delivering, the output, the work product is actually pretty good, right? And so we've kind of changed that. And so what we've done is every single customer, in order to work with us, has to go through a strategy sprint. And it's 8 weeks. And it's been night and day, because the strategy sprint, think of it as like, it's a team that is there and is setting up all, not only understanding like your company, your contacts, your audiences you're going after, everything else. It's setting up our system, setting up our platform, but also creating all the artifacts we need to feed into our workflows in order to be successful. So adapting the workflows, but also generating the artifacts and all the inputs that are going to go into these workflows, and making sure the strategy is correct, right? And so it's made kind of a huge difference, because everyone comes to us and they're like, oh, we're the same. We just want this thing. And then you start, and their definition of done is different. Their definition of success is different. The things you got to overcome in order to remove the risk from delivering and hitting those goals is different. And so you need to just navigate those companies very differently, right? And what's important to them is differently. And so from there, then they go to an account team. And so those things, I think, made a huge difference.
I really like that model. Are you reviewing deliverables in those 8 weeks, or the stuff happens after that?
Yes. Like, so the way to think about it is we're seeking to understand week one. Week two, we're literally building all the artifacts, right? So artifact can be like your company context, audience personas. It's writing guidelines. It can be, brand style. There is a fairly well-known founder that we're working with that's launching a brand in the healthcare space, or for women's health, for example, right? They haven't launched yet, but it's like they've done, over 12 months of product research into the physical product that they're going to deliver, right? Like, those are the types of things that we're like, you need to understand their brand, the nuances. You need to understand the space. You need to understand like what matters to that audience. So we'll do things like, hey, have you done UX research? Have you talked? Can we talk to your audience? Oh, we have a bunch of video recorders. Great. We'll transcribe it. We'll ingest it. Hey, can we go interview someone? We just talked to their chief medical officer this morning, for instance, right? Like, and you ingest all of that, and all of that is like such rich information. Most people are just really bad at processing that information, right? And then they're really bad at figuring out how to take that information that's like a bunch of noise, a bunch of things, and create artifacts that can be dynamically ingested into these workflows, right? Not just this prompt, but like in different parts in different ways, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
and then from there, it's like, okay, here's the strategy, here's what we're going to prioritize, here's why we're doing it. Align, great. Now let's calibrate. Here's one work output. How does that look? No, okay, let's tweak. But then usually by like week 4, for most cases, unless like there's a lot of nuanced things, like we're ready to start executing. And then at that point, you're building the rhythm, right? And so it's like, as quickly as possible, get to that point.
Yeah, and I think one thing you and I talked about too, which Ali, we didn't even discuss this, but these strategy sprints, they're also paid. So you guys are getting paid to do all this and learn and help these companies figure out more about them and what they can possibly
Yeah.
do. So it's a win-win for everybody, because this company is getting immense value within a very short 8-week time. It's a sprint, right? You guys are getting paid to do it. So even if it doesn't work out and they're not the right company and not the right fit for GrowthX, they're getting a ton of value just out of that 8-week sprint, and you guys still get paid to do the work. It's like, as a business model, it's so good. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and like there's things too that I think a lot of people just haven't experienced that with agencies or service providers. And so they're very skeptical at first.
Yep.
But then when you start to show them the outputs is in the first few weeks, and even the fact that you can take any of these artifacts that we're going to give you, and those are actually perfect artifacts to use, whether you're using Claude, ChatGPT, whether you're putting it into another workflow somewhere else. Like, these are actually really valuable. One of the customers we kicked off a couple weeks ago, they're doing a major pivot, and we did an entire TAM and ICP analysis for them that was like insanely detailed with like over 50 different sources, and we literally sized the entire market for them. And they were kind of shocked. They were like, what the hell? This is insane. This is so much better than if we had to hire a consultant. And that piece didn't take that long, And so those are the types of things that we're doing, and finding ways to go above and beyond. But now guess what? Now we have a workflow and an entire process for how to do that again. And maybe now that's part of our deliverables, right? We built a comparison workflow that goes and compares every single feature of every single product that even remotely correlates to your products, and spits out this like massive table with like feature comparisons, right? We did it for one customer because we were doing programmatic product comparison pages. And now that we can use that for onboarding, during the strategy sprints for any customer that might make sense, So those are the things where you do it once and maybe it's not the exact same thing you're doing again, but the common patterns just exist and you just keep getting better, right? Or there was a customer that we worked with that care a lot about medical papers. Well, we integrated with a bunch of different APIs to pull medical research. Now those APIs are pulled just like this with our coding agent that builds the workflows, right? Now that's available. So that's where like actually service as software can have a huge advantage over software alone because you're never going to go that deep. And you're with every run and with every new client, you're not building new things.
Totally. So I have two major questions for you. One, how do you actually record all the processes? So this is the $1 million question, or maybe I should $200 million question, maybe. But how do you actually record those processes? So like you're doing all of these things. How do you codify those processes and make them reusable so you can apply them to new customers? Because there's a lot. Like I can tell you, we're obviously a services business ourselves, right? But we have hard coded some stuff deeply into our workflows that allow us to move at much greater efficiency. But with that said, it's a very manual process to record and codify those workflows. It's not like we did it once, now it's recorded, let's repeat it. How do you record those processes and make them usable again?
Yeah, I mean, it's, for lack of better words, kind of like vibe coding. And so you just come and you write your plan, and like step by step, just do a really good job with that.
But this is within the GrowthX platform.
Yeah. And like the goal right now, like the way to think about it is think of it as right now internally, the way we build workflows is more like a AI coding experience that with an engineer. And our goal in the next few months is to launch a version that will be more like a vibe coding experience for non-developers. Right now, we just are not focused on that because actually what's adding a lot of value, like most companies are coming to us, they're not saying, I want to build the workflows. Most people are not like you two, right? Like in the sense that like they actually don't want to spend like 100 hours thinking through the nitty gritty of architecting the best workflow possible to solve something, right? What they really want to know is like, hey, I have this SDR over here. That person, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but she went from no demos to 5-10 demos booked a day. And her process is way better than every other SDR. Take that and make that the standard for everybody, please. Thank you. Yeah. All right, see you later, right? Like that's what most companies want, and they want the time to that, like to be as fast as possible. So for us, it's like, that's why the strategy sprint is so important. It's just seeking to understand, right? And then once we do that, then we're like, okay, now that makes sense. Like we kicked off with the customer on Monday, and he's fairly well known in the go-to-market space. He has a bunch of keynotes and a bunch of things recorded, like literally hundreds. Podcast episodes, videos, LinkedIn posts. And he's just like, every day I'm on these calls and I say something smart and I click a little thing in my meeting recorder saying, hey, that was a cool thing I said. And like, but no one sees that, right? And so all I want is for you to take all of this and help craft like a really unique voice that sounds like me and like create content for both the newsletter and for, my social. That's it. But I wanted to be really nuanced because I had someone else doing this and it was just horrible, right? And so then you take that plan, you figure out what's the inputs, like what do you want to do, how do you want to think about it, and then that's it, right? Like then the coding agent goes and codes it all, and we have like kind of this 4-file system that has like the prompts, the workflows, the activities, the README, everything's auto documented, and if there's any components that were already used before, like say scraping, it doesn't need to build a new scraping tool. It can pull that automatically, right? Like, and so, and it pings any APIs or it can use any APIs and, and then you iterate it a little bit and that's it.
Yeah. I think it's also important to mention for the audience too, that you guys have legitimate engineers. It's not people vibe coding this stuff. There's legitimate engineers on the GrowthX team. Very legitimate.
The team, like for anyone out there, I don't know how many like founders or people thinking of starting businesses, like one of my probably biggest piece of advice on the technical side is hire principal engineers to start. And I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, the fact that we have, just yesterday, one of our principal engineers was early on in Coinbase, like, oh yeah, Coinbase, we did this, but we were handling about 100 million transactions a second, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, cool. Like, oh, at Airbnb we did this, at Stripe we did this. And it was like, okay, like, you come with that
You're surrounded
experience
by greatness. Yeah, when you're surrounded by greatness,
and they
greatness
just
happens.
know, and it's just like my co-founder CTO calls it like judo moves, where like you can do the million lines of code move, and then maybe sometimes there's that one move that just kind of shortcuts it all and just gets you to the thing you need. And we're super inspired by like Jason Fried. He has a lot of really good writings from 37 Signals and Basecamp. And my co-founder's last company was a spinoff from Basecamp at 37 Signals. But anyone interested, look up Shaping. That's a piece that right on kind of shaping products and things like that. Yeah.
Write it down, buy the book. All right, Marcel. Well, that's going to lead me right into my next question, which is the juiciest question of all. But you guys have scaled, I think, beyond 7 million in ARR from a run rate perspective in 12 months. You got to 3 million ARR run rate in 6 months. You guys are scaling rapidly. You're picking up some of the biggest names in the world. I don't know what you can disclose, but I know personally you're signing some of the craziest companies in the world. How are you doing it? How are you scaling so fast? What's the trick? What's the method that everyone wants to know? This is literally the $200 million question.
I, no, I think we're approaching it very differently. Is just when you're signing up to solve a lot of the messiness. I feel like with SaaS, people are like, what is the bare minimum I can solve that somebody's willing to pay $50 for? And then I think at some point, people that have big problems, they don't want, to coordinate 100 little things that solve $50 problems. And they want to play some bets down and they want to focus on other things, right? And they're busy and they just want help. And then they're like, whoa, you're helping me with this? This is amazing. Here. Like, I don't know a single CMO or a single CEO that just wants to hire a bunch more people today. Like, nobody. And so I think it just really plays into the fact that I just knew the pain we were solving because it was my pain. Like, we're selling what I wanted to buy, essentially, right? In every single step of my career. And I think we have a lot of the know-how. And then we just spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours building these AI workflows and building these things, in the manual way with low-code tools, dragging and dropping, and even the ones that have like low-code pilots and whatever, like, and then a new model would come out or something else would change. And it's like, like I got to now go refactor like 2,000 hours that I spent building these workflows. I got to go refactor all of them. And then I would spend like a whole month refactoring them, or something would break, or we wanted to make a workflow a little bit more robust, and it would literally take so long. And it's just like not manageable, right? Like, so then because we're building for ourselves to deliver a service, we know exactly what to build. There's no sunken costs, right? But also because we're doing services and it's a highly profitable service, we can take our profits and invest in our people, So the 20 plus principal engineers and really senior people that we have, like, we probably wouldn't be able to afford even as a Series A company with some funding, right? And so I think people see that, and but I think more genuinely too, I just try to be along the journey like generous with my time. I know I don't post as much as I probably should, but I try to just be super generous with my knowledge. Like, not long ago, I did this 2-hour session where I literally like open source everything we did. And so if anyone's interested, ping me. I'll send you the link you can send to people. But it's mostly like literally 2 hours of every single thing I learned in the last year of building the company and how we went from 0 to 7, right? And
that's
I think,
extremely valuable. If you want to grow a
yeah.
business of $7 million in run rate in 1 year, this is the guy you should learn from.
No, I appreciate it, man. You're all too kind.
Yeah.
So in that year, like starting out, what would you say some of like the early processes that you set up really like enabled the scaling later? And what would you say is like some of those processes that you wish you had that you didn't have? What would those be?
So many. Okay. At first, the thing is, as a founder, just do every job. Just do every job. Do not delegate shit. Like, just do every job. And then if you wanna, and then solve for how do I get more of my personal time back? Not how do I delegate things? How do I get my time back? And if you do those two things to begin, then you're already in a really good place, because you can do a lot as a founder because you have so much context. You can close deals faster. Like, people want to hear from you. You can, do exactly how you think things should be done if you have that domain expertise. If you don't start a company, right? Like, but but if you do, like, you know what you're doing, right? And so that was kind of like the beginning. Was like, okay, I don't want to delegate like a customer kickoff call. Like that is super valuable. But what I want to do is make it to where I'm figuring out how to do a great job of the first one, and I'm not worrying about scaling. And then the second time around, I'm copy and pasting that template and improving it a little. By the third time, I'm creating a standard operating procedure or something that's going to make that even better and faster. And then learning from the first few, right? And then just standardizing, right? And then you do the kickoffs like, hey, you know what? We should probably send a follow up right after with what we heard. All right, cool. Let me take the transcript. Actually, let me create this prompt really quickly. Okay, cool. This is how we're going to process. Oh, actually, we already created this artifact for them that is about their company. So let me use that and use that with the transcript and come out with like, this is what we heard after the first call. And then you keep doing those things where, oh, you created these artifacts. Now I can process this information way better. And then, so you templatize and do those things. And then like, they're just seeing these really high quality like outputs coming, right? And so that really helped. But then the things where we messed up, right? And I think it was like August of last year, we signed up like 12 customers in 1 month. And I hadn't even announced the company. That was, I think, a mistake.
I remember you telling me that, and I was just like, how the hell are you managing that many clients?
It was just like insane. It was just like everybody from the workshop wanted to sign up, and people told other people, and like it wasn't on my LinkedIn profile. We didn't even have a website, like nothing, right? And I was like, oh man, this is crazy. So then we were just hiring really fast, and because of that, I decided to focus more on sales than delivery. And I think that was a big mistake, as far as like, hey, don't leave the delivery side of fulfilling what you're promising too early. I also at times like delegated the hiring process too early, and so a lot of those things like where we really, really had to refocus on that late last year and put together like a much, much, much stronger like hiring process. And at times, like if you're thinking of scaling really fast, you're like, you know what? I can just, depending on how you're thinking about it, you're just going to go and reach out to a few folks, right? And you're just like, I know exactly who I want this person, right?
Yep.
But at some point, if you're scaling faster, you can't rely on that. So you need to build an inbound pipeline. So now we get about 1,000 people applying a day, and we have workflows that review those applications. We have like recruiters in the loop. We have like recruiting partners that help bring more candidates in and help find like the harder to find ones. Like we have asynchronous processes. We have assignments to give. We have paid assignments to give. We have, like all of that like way more robust, And so, but the really cool thing is also we're just building workflows for everything we do. And so the fact that we have this AI coding engine that builds these workflows makes it to where everything we do is so much easier because every process can be powered by these workflows as well.
Totally. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget about when they think about how to value a business. So obviously the quality of the output, first and foremost, is the most important thing. If you don't have happy customers, your business is going to fail over time. You can have the best sales in the world, but if your customers don't stick around, your business won't stick around either. But I think what people forget about that you've done a phenomenal job doing is part of the value of GrowthX and every other company that ends up being very successful is how easy is this company to operate? It's like, can I buy this company from somebody, operate it, and continue to make money the same way or better than they were? And I think you're a textbook example of best in class when it comes to that because you've built an operating system that is going to eventually be able to almost run on itself with a few quality operators and be extremely lucrative, extremely successful, and continue to run for a very long time. So I think that's just like something that everyone should be thinking about when they're building a business. It's not just, can I build a business, deliver now, hope it's going to keep running for the next 5-10 years. Build something that you could sell to somebody and they're going to get immense value from it. Not just your customers, but also the potential acquirer down the road.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think you're right. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think for us, company building is what we're building in some ways, is the product. It's kind of sounds weird to say out loud, but it's like, to me, what's fun is figuring out how to company build in a different way, in a more AI native way, break every rule, don't raise money. And then when people say, FVC money, don't ever raise money, or it's like, who cares? Like, like we're doing what's right for us. Like, after the rules, like we're doing what makes sense. We're navigating. We're really experienced operators. I've been around like essentially like four very, very, very successful companies, and three of those were some of the fastest growing companies ever. And then I've seen all the good, bad, and ugly. And, and I know what I want. I know, the kind of culture I want to build. And I think, like for me, there's just like three principles that as we're company building that matter. Do the best work of your life, inspire others around you and outside to, in everything you're doing, and do achieve more than you thought was possible. And I think like if those three things are true, you're just gonna be happy and do a good job, and it's gonna be hard as hell, but I think, that's I'm like, if you look back at the best time of your life, like what was the best work you've ever done in your life? And what was the time you were the most inspired and people around you were just so inspired by what you were doing? And then what are the times that where you look back 6 months prior and you're like, oh my goodness, there's no way I would have imagined I would have been here 6 months ago, And if you keep looking back, like I look back 3 months ago and I look where our platform is, where our tech is, and the people on the engineering and product side, and then even on the delivery side, we made able to recruit. I'm like, this is insane. I feel like I do not deserve this. This is insane. And then if I look back like 6 months ago, I'm like, that's insane. Like that is crazy. And then look a year ago, I'm like, that's crazy, right? Like, and so for me, it's less about like those three things are so rewarding. I had some, I think Alex, you told me a story of someone that then, quit their job and said they were
Totally.
inspired. And,
Quit a really great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, quit a great job in their early 20s, quit a great job in a leadership role with equity, left that company because they were so inspired by what you were building that they wanted to replicate it for a different sphere. So yeah, crazy.
That's awesome.
I mean, you're making people quit their jobs, Marcel. I'm just kidding.
That's really rewarding because this shit is hard. People don't realize CEOs are like garbage cans. People come to you with shit and garbage only. Like nobody comes to you as like, hey, I'm having a really good day. Everything's going according to plan.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear about all the good things? Like that's
Yeah,
true.
totally.
Like people only come to the CEO when they think that there's no one else that should make this decision, and it's a really hard decision, and they don't want to make that decision.
Totally. We have to rewind a bit though, because I have another question that you talked about. So you talked about breaking the mold, doing things differently, and doing whatever the hell you think is best and what you want to do to chase your vision. You raised $12 million very publicly. Services companies very rarely raise money to begin with, especially extremely profitable service companies. So
Yeah.
why did you do that? What were you thinking? What were the outcomes that you wanted going into that decision? Also, let's talk about how quickly you raised that money. And then what were the outcomes that have actually been driven since you've done that?
I think it was right around December. We're growing like crazy. We needed to hire. So I think the first thought was like, we're profitable, but as a bootstrap business, you have to be very cash flow conscious, right? You can have literally, I mean, at one point, I think we had like 700, 800K in receivables that were to come in the next 60 days. And then payroll is in the hundreds of thousands and your credit card's pretty high. And you're like, fuck, okay, that's scary. So I got a line of credit on my own mortgage, right? And I was like, let me just have this over here just in case, right? And then a founder friend of mine was like, do not do that. Do not touch the line. That is toxic. Do not. I was like, oh, my bad. Okay, cool. Like, and I'm fiscally conservative, right? So if I'm running a business, a bootstrap business that is not demand constrained, and and then you realize there is a huge tech play, and that all of a sudden you build this thing that you think has huge potential, and that you realize you need principal engineers. And the kind of profile we wanted to hire are the kind of people that have been at Stripe, at Airbnb, at Coinbase. These are people that we have about 7 people in our company that have started and sold companies before, right? Like at CTO levels. And so it's like these people are not going to just like they were offer CTO positions at Series A and B companies, right? They're not going to take a job at a bootstrap company. They have no idea where it's going. That's just going to like kind of sail along, and the CEO is just going to collect dividends and everybody else can F off with just a salary, right? Like so like in order for us to attract those people, we knew we needed to have just legit like due diligence by a legit VC. And I mean there's other ways to raise capital, but but we also wanted to share the upside with employees, and so, and at the end of the day, we did it very differently. We didn't raise any money prior to it. We and we went with just like a traditional like Series A, and we only went with one VC, Karan from Madrona. I had worked with him before, and you're getting married to that person, right? Like, and so for us, it was way more about the person. And then maybe just a word of caution to anyone that's an employee, but also like founders, right? Because this is like super important. We raised a pretty reasonable multiple, and one of the reasons we did that is because, like, as an employee, after you raise, right, like the equity you're issuing your employees has an exercise cost. That exercise cost is based on essentially a discount off of whatever your investors are paying for it, which is their preferred, right? And so if you raise at an inflated valuation and your exercise cost is directly correlated to that, which means as an employee, in order for you to buy those options, right, you're having to pay a much heftier fee, right? So if you raise at 100x valuation, you're like, hell yeah, look at me, look at the status, like, look, my company, I'm paper rich, awesome, whatever, right? Like, then your employees are getting screwed because now you have to exit at $1 billion in order for them to make $1. And it's like, shit, And so for us, like, we wanted to partner with someone that was very founder friendly, that we trusted, but also like we didn't want to inflate our valuations. We raised just enough money that we thought we needed, and we're managing like our cash flow in a very good way. But then that enabled us to attract the kind of talent we attracted, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's say a profitable agency comes to you and says, we have this idea for a SaaS. We want to attract one of our good friends who works at some really big tech company. We have all this customer data. Should we focus on the agency or try to build out the SaaS and take a leap on it? What's your perspective?
I think you focus on delivering what's valuable to the person you want to serve as fast and as easy as possible, right? Like, and so rather than is this software, is this service, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, UIs are over. I mean, we have workflows that we take the output of the workflow, we spin it into a prompt that's also generated by workflow, and it creates an entire UI to interact with that output, right? Like, so we're navigating towards this world where UIs are, no longer relevant, or it's going to be very different. And so it's less about that. It's more about how do you deliver value in the way that the people you want to serve want to receive that value, and interact with it. And I think like that's way more important. And then sure, there's software plays. Like we have a few software plays that we're going to launch here soon, because we've built some really cool workflows that are now really robust APIs that are super valuable, So I think it's less about the form factor. It's more about how do you sign up to do the output that is valuable to a company, and then build behind that in whatever way is needed.
Yeah, and I think part of the beauty of running a services business too is you learn what becomes valuable over time just by working with companies and learning from experience. So it's like we have a ton of different things that we never thought about. Like we have our own internal workflows, maybe they're not GrowthX level, but we have our own internal workflows that we use for a lot of different things that we're doing on a repetitive basis, right? We didn't say when we started the company, we're going to build this workflow to do this. We learned from experience. This sucked. I don't want to have to go through this entire process again.
Yeah.
Let's create an SOP around this and think about how we can augment and automate a lot of the different work that we just did manually. So we end up doing that. And then what ends up happening is you realize, okay, this isn't something this customer faced and we have to do for this one customer. This is something that every single one of our customers faces that's valuable to them. So let's standardize this in a way that we can replicate it, which is basically what you guys have been able to do at a much larger scale. But it's like, I'll even use an example here that we use internally. And this isn't even building. This is literally just using the tools that are at your fingertips right now.
Okay.
But like with Claude, you can create a custom project. It's the same thing as a custom GPT, but I think Claude tends to be much better when it becomes
way better.
Yeah, when it comes to creating projects. So like I have a very specific way. Keep in mind, my background is in tech sales. A very specific way that I know helps prospects convert after we've had an initial discovery call, right? Make them actually become clients of Understory and want to work with us. And how do you do that? You show them, one, that you've been listening. Right? You actually paid attention to their pains, their desires, everything that makes them want to talk to you in the first place. You paid attention. So that's part number one. Two, you have actionable next steps that touch on those pains and desires. You have deadlines when those next steps are actually due. So today is June 19th. By June 23rd, I want you to have what you said done or have this reviewed internally to have a response to us. Here's what my actions are. Let me label them accordingly. I gave Claude a series of, I think, 20 or 25 different, like beautifully, perfectly sculpted emails that I had created that work for clients who actually convert into customers for us. And then I gave it another series of emails that I'll use for prospects that have gone cold. We had an amazing discovery call with them. They said, we're super interested. We haven't heard from them in 3 weeks. Let's re-engage them. And let's use the transcripts from the calls that we had to pick apart all that information, put it into a beautiful email, spit it out, send it to them, get them back on the line. By the way, 3 calls have been booked from me running that exact workflow last night, today,
Awesome.
1 while we've been on this podcast. But
Awesome.
all you do is you feed a transcript into a Claude project and tell it, I want a follow-up email or I want a re-engagement email. Spits out something beautiful. That saved me, no lie, probably 5 to 8 hours every single week.
So like that right there, right? Like, so think about it. Most people would look at that example and go, okay, Claude is the answer, right? And it's like, yes, Claude is really powerful, but what unlocked the value wasn't how you prompted necessarily, although I'm sure it was good. It wasn't because it was Claude only, although that was a good, it had a positive impact on it and the technology being there, but it was because like you had years of experience figuring out the thought patterns and the sequences and how to do that in the middle the right way. And you had the intuition and you had the domain knowledge and expertise to figure out how to get the inputs out of the person and how to understand their intent, how to appeal to that, and what to do about it, right? And how to deliver that in the right way. And because of that, you had all the examples and all the messy middle formatted in a way that was highly digestible and AI ready. And then, like, you could get a lot of value out of that, right? Problem is, most people do not have this shit here in the middle that you just described. And they don't even know how to get to that level of insight ever, right? Like, and so I think that's what a lot of companies are struggling with because they have a lot of mediocre junior people that don't know that and are going into Claude and seeing like, I know I'm going to use AI. I'm going to go into Claude project.
Yeah,
and
write me a follow-up email to this sales call that I had with
and it's
company.
like, oh, this is kind of garbage. It's like, it's not like the messy middle is what drives that greatness, you know? So
totally. And
I feel like we can talk for the next hour, but you know, this is fun.
Yeah. I even took it a step further where we have individual landing pages for paid media, for go-to-market engineering. We have individual calendar links depending on what the service offering that we're offering is. And Claude will go as far as understand and contextualize the contents of the email, assign the right links, and hyperlink it on specific words. So it's perfect. Like, you had to build all that, though. To your point, you have to build all of that, and you have to have that domain expertise and have that knowledge and those examples that you can feed into anything in order to make
overnight success. 20 years in the making.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. I know we're at time. I don't know if you have a few more minutes.
I unfortunately have a hard stop. I'm doing a listening tour of all our customers, and
oh wow!
So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, totally. We'll do this again, but yeah, amazing episode, amazing time. Always great talking to you, and then maybe some more stuff planned in the upcoming months.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's make it a regular thing.
All right.
Next time in our
Marcel,
office.
Thank you for coming on.
All right, sounds good. Thank you both. Talk soon.